Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
A joy to have in the studios right now Rebecca Patterson with all of her work, working with the Trust of Bessemer, and also, of course, her work with J.P. Morgan ages ago and with a small shop up in Connecticut called Bridgewater. She came in because it gets too cold, you know.
Today's like the warmest day is for like 2 weeks today.
Yeah, Connecticut can get like the Dakotas.
You guys
sometimes.
have good coffee. I come in for the hot beverages.
We do. Well, we have a beverage of your choice, and we'll give you a Tito's and Tang gift pack when you leave. You wrote an EFT about everything you do, which is to come back to the foundation of the dollar. Is the dollar under threat after the foolishness of the last number of days?
I think the important thing about the dollar is time frame and degree. You know, a lot of the media coverage this week with the threats of possible military intervention to acquire Greenland against its will, and then the backing off it. You saw some market reaction, but it was really just a one-day sell America. And everyone's saying, well, gosh, no one sold treasuries. Everything's fine. It's all hype. I'm like, no, it's not. It's time frame. What we're seeing is a slow erosion of confidence in dollar-based assets. This is something that will play out over years, not a day or a week or a month, but it's happening. We saw news this week that Sweden's largest private pension fund is reducing significantly its treasury holdings. And yes, Denmark is not a large country, but they're getting rid of their treasuries. There's more to come.
I mean, Paul, I just love it having Rebecca. And can you just see the poor soul who had 3 martinis in the city in London, goes back to their desk at a major bank, calls up on the phone and goes, sell America.
Sell America, exactly. So what does that mean for the dollar here? We had the dollar sell off early last year.
Yep.
Then it could stabilize and actually had a decent second half of the year here. Is the dollar still at risk, do you think?
Modest risk this year. So, there are a lot of factors that come together that drive currency markets. Part of it is cross-border capital and trade flows. Part of it is expectations for interest rates, so the relative yield of a currency. What helped the dollar in part in the second half of last year, we didn't see as much hedging action. So foreign or U.S. investors hedging out dollar risk. And then we also saw a reduction in expectations for Fed rate cuts, i.e. relatively higher rates. And that also gave a support to the dollar. This year, given how strong the U.S. economy is at a high level and given sticky inflation, which you talked about earlier this morning, it's going to be hard for the Federal Reserve to cut much unless something drastic changes. So that is going to prevent the dollar from weakening a lot. The dollar hedging, the diversification, like I said, this is kind of a slow drip, drip, drip. This isn't a sudden flood. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a stable or maybe slightly lower dollar this year.
Well, given that backdrop, the global geopolitical backdrop, I guess it's no surprise that we've seen gold been ripping like crazy. Is that still kind of the play?
Yeah. So to me, that's the most obvious reflection of the diversification trade that's taking place. We know some of it is investors, and those could be speculative investors as well. But underlying that, we continue to see central bank demand. Central banks diversifying slowly but surely out of the U.S., looking for other liquid assets. You talk to my good friend Mark Sobel at OMFIF, the World Gold Council. Both of them do really good surveys of central banks every year, asking them, what do you intend to do going forward? And the data shows that they're going to keep buying gold.
It was not expected a meeting of the President of the United States with Mr. Zelensky of Ukraine. Clearly off the radar, given yesterday's festivities. Mr. Zelensky now speaking at the meetings of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Our team there will give you all that coverage. We'll look for the headlines here and bring them to you when we can. I look at your council in foreign relations. I mean, Froman hasn't slept in 6 days. It's nuts. Everyone's publishing. I know you're going to publish and give us a head start on that. But I look at back-to-back in the Foreign Affairs magazine, Elizabeth Economy on the international relations of the Arctic Ocean, and then you followed up with your senior fellow on China with all that's going on. In the frenzy at CFR, what are you focused on most? What does Rebecca Patterson study?
I always look at the intersection of geopolitics, the economy, and financial markets because they all influence each other. One of the things I'm looking at now ahead of the Supreme Court decision about U.S. tariffs is if we reduce the tariffs, take them off, shift them around, how does that translate into the affordability narrative in the United States? If tariffs are removed, do we actually see any price change that benefits U.S. consumers? How does that play out in the midterm election? So again, it's looking at all these connections. So that is a piece of work I'm working on right now because I think we should get the Supreme Court decision fairly shortly. So that's one. I think the other one I'm trying to spend time on is the Federal Reserve. So we know we're going to get an announcement probably in the next week or so with the next nominee. But none of us ever had to think about the legal intricacies of the Fed before. Now I'm trying to understand things like, could you see not only $200 billion buying of mortgage-backed securities, could you see $1 trillion of mortgage-backed securities?
Paul's got 8 questions. Let me be rude and interrupt once more. At Bessemer Trust, ages ago, you don't go to cash. I mean, with all the cacophony you just mentioned, how do you handle this news at CFR and where else? How do you do it and not go to cash?
Well, I think the big takeaway for me is that while treasuries, U.S. government bonds still act as a diversifier in a portfolio, you can't expect them to work as effectively as they have for the last several decades. So when you diversify a portfolio, you have to think about it differently. That is part of the support for gold prices, which is extraordinary. It's part of why we see people going into alternatives more, different types of alternative assets. And I think it's part of why, again, so far this year, we're seeing foreign markets outperforming the U.S. So it's asset diversification, geographic diversification. But you're right, Tom, getting out of the markets, given that risk assets outperform diversifying assets 8 years out of 10, because the economy is growing 8 years out of 10. So to get out to react to the geopolitical headlines, you're doing yourself a disservice.
And Paul, as you know, you got to get back in. I mean, I was in cash, but I took the leverage away and I went further to cash 2-3 days ago.
Fine, no problem.
I'm hammered. I missed this.
Well, and I mean, even professional investors, the smartest ones in the world, timing when to get in and out is a fool's errand. That's why you stay in the market. You just make tactical shifts on the margin.
All the news this week coming out of Davos, coming out of Greenland, we kind of forgot about Japan had a little bit of a problem in their bond market earlier this week. That spooked people big time earlier in the week.
Yes.
Was that just a technical thing? Should we not worry about it? Is there any contagion issue there?
Yes. Okay. So, yes, you should worry about it. Yes, there is contagion. I'm talking about U.S. Treasuries and are we going to have enough buyers to meet the amount of supply we have to issue to pay for our deficits? But it's important to remember over the last 20 or so years, global bond markets have gotten much more integrated. People own global bonds, not just their own country's bonds today. And that means something that happens in Japan or France or the UK can and will affect the U.S. Treasury market also.
Okay.
So we do need to care about Japan, what the Bank of Japan does at its next meeting, which I believe is tonight, right? And then, of course, Prime Minister Takaichi, when she has this snap election, do we see additional stimulus after that? How does that make people think about the fiscal dynamics?
So, again, I come back to I have to buy U.S. Treasuries. Buy Treasuries in gold.
No. Look, I'm not saying dump all your Treasuries by any stretch, but you want to think more diversified. It's been fascinating to me to see that you are seeing institutional investors looking at more fiscally sound bond markets today. So countries that don't have those big debt difficulties looking ahead.
So you load the boat in Germany? Is that what I'm hearing here?
I mean, some of the European bond markets are attractive. Canada, Australia, relatively better. Norway, Singapore. The problem is these markets don't have as much liquidity. So that's only so far it can take you. But you do want to have a global basket of bonds. And emerging markets. EM is the new DM. So emerging market fiscal dynamics today are much better than they've been in general. I'm not talking about every country for a long time.
Should we steal that phrase? EM is the new DM.
Or DM is the new EM.
I got to go nerd on you. Back to foreign exchange at JP Morgan here. I mean, I'm sorry. The Japanese mass, when it goes, to me, is wildly nonlinear. Discuss the jump condition we could see in Japan if it unravels.
Well, the JGB market, the Japanese government bond market, is not the most liquid bond market, to say the least. So to your point, Tom, the risk of a jump, right, of a big move, and we saw a bit of that on Tuesday, another one of those happening, you will have contagion to the Japanese stock market. And a lot of investors have added Japanese exposure over the last 15, 18 months. So there's contagion risk there that could come back and affect global markets.
With the cold coming, I mean, Rebecca and I live in this same neighborhood. I mean, Rebecca, Saturday, 11 above zero on the east side of Central Park. I mean, 10 degrees on Tuesday. It gets even worse next week. How much wind do you need to take an Uber the 3 blocks you need to walk? Is it like 2 miles an hour, or do you need to see 10 or 15
I'm just
miles?
hoping not to go outside at all. God bless Zoom and Teams.
The delivery, actually.
I'm going to be making a lot of soup, I think, Saturday morning. I'm going to be stocking up.
What's a favorite soup?
My favorite is butternut squash, but a good homemade cream of tomato soup, and I'm going to play with some lentils, I think, this weekend.
There you go.
See, it's the 9 o'clock hour, Alexis, where you just go into the food segment.
You know what? Yesterday, I made avgolemino. It's a Greek egg lemon soup. Ooh, that sounds good. Fantastic. I'll give you the recipe.
Do you know the Greek restaurant on York Avenue? It starts with a Y. It's phenomenal.
Yessi. I think that's it. I have to look. Yeah. I know what I can picture.
And I get that soup.
Oh, fantastic.
They call it Soup Alexis. It's great. So can you bring in like lemon Greek potatoes?
I can do that.
They're my favorite.
Are they delicious?
I tried to cook them like 8 times and I'm done.
And they get dried out and
I'm a failure.
See, this is one of the many reasons I love Bloomberg. I have great conversations with you all. I never know where it's going. And when I'm done, you have this amazing food and coffee spread upstairs.
Just hang out.
It is a little treat.
Well, Mr. Bloomberg's people stopped by today. They said, "Is it true Rebecca Patterson's in?" I said, "Yes." They said, "We'll have the Cheez-Its down." Rebecca Patterson, thank you so much. So the Council on Foreign Relations, a recent essay in the Financial Times on the challenges, including important quotes there from the pension system of Denmark as well. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Surveillance coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
We are privileged now, whatever your politics, after what we saw yesterday, here to pick up the pieces. Wendy Schiller, professor of chaos, Brown University. Wendy, is there a permanent change in the diplomacy of the United States after Trump? Is this the way it's going to be?
Well, I don't know. We hesitate to say permanent when we talk about American politics. But the president is simultaneously projecting power, but not in the way that I think Europe is used to, which is through treaty, diplomacy, sort of a whole coordinated effort, balancing countries off each other, consultation. That's not happening. But the president is still really extending a very long arm, a very long reach of American power. And he's trying to leverage, I think, economic power over military power. He's had success in terms of NATO, Europe kicking in more money for their own defense and basically telling Europe, we'll be your partner when it's in our interest, but we're not going to be on call for you anymore. And I think that's a significant shift for Europe to deal with.
Wendy, what have we seen from Europe this week at Davos and then just in the last 12 months of this second Trump administration about showing some solidarity here? It just doesn't feel like it's even there. Even this week, in terms of trying to craft a response to President Trump's discussions about Greenland, it just doesn't seem like Europe's that unified yet.
Right. So, Paul, that's an excellent point. I mean, the stunning thing is how President Trump sets the world's agenda. This is really something. I mean, we saw Reagan, but Reagan had a sort of a consistent platform and a solid enemy, quote unquote, in the Soviet Union. So it was sort of easy to sort of dominate that conversation. Now the world is such a very different place, but President Trump still dominates international politics this way. And Europe seems to be scrambling. They have their own problems. Internally, I think issues like the economy, transitional economy, tech, and immigration have really roiled Europe. So I think each individual country's trying to get their own footing, particularly since Brexit. I think losing the Great Britain as a real partner in the EU, I think has really created more turmoil there than we would have expected.
Where are the senators? I mean, I can pull out any number from the past. Let's go with Richard Lugar, who was, a wonderful Republican senator. Are there Richard Lugars out there monitoring this, discussing this, being senatorial?
Tom, I just think there isn't as much capital or political value to senators in focusing on international affairs, particularly in the Republican Party. I think the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have traded places there. But right now, Americans are concerned about what's going on in America. I think that's what 2024 told us. And I think that the polls continue to tell us, affordability, housing, healthcare, these are domestic issues. Yeah. And I think that's where there's no real political gain for reminding America that being a partner to Europe is a safer place to be than not being a partner with Europe.
And it's the smartest single thing I've heard, Paul, in all this 30-hour extravaganza with the president. I mean, Richard Lugar, and on the Wikipedia page, Sam Nunn, Evan Bayh, Victoria Nuland. I mean, Paul, we are in a method of how we do this, and it's shattered.
Yeah, he certainly upended the political spectrum. So, Wendy, again, it is election year here. To what extent do we think President Trump, when he does get back to the States, maybe does refocus a little bit more on the domestic agenda? How important do you think he's going to be in these midterm elections?
Well, I mean, that's interesting. I'm not sure he focuses on the policy agenda, but it does look like he's refocusing his attention on Republican primaries and using that power among the really loyal Republican primary voter base, which tends to be the most ideological, the most conservative, and the most in love with Trump, to affect things like Bill Cassidy's race in Louisiana, Senator Cassidy, to get Cassidy to vote for things that Trump wants. But right now, the president hasn't articulated what he wants from Congress going forward this year. So it's one thing to hold the sort of Damocles over their heads, but what are you asking for? And I've been surprised that he hasn't wanted to resolve the issue of Obamacare premium subsidies. That's going to continue to ripple and filter and affect people and affect his approval ratings. So how come he's not leaning on Congress to get that done?
Paul, can we go inside Brown University now?
Sure.
Professor Schiller, William Rhodes, 91 years old, all that he's done for Brown University. At Citigroup, folks, he codified the idea, central banker to the world. Bill Rhodes with an essay in the FT walking through how all this is shattered. And he says, you know what? All King Charles has to do is step up and see the royalty of Denmark, and that would change the dialogue. I mean, it was literally Bill Rhodes throwing back to the 19th century. Can the royal family actually get in the middle of this Greenland issue and change the dialogue of President Trump?
No, but I mean, a phone call to President Trump probably wouldn't hurt. He likes the royal family. He likes the pomp and circumstance. So I don't think it's a terrible idea. And we do have the Rhodes Center at the Watson Institute, and it's a terrific political economy center. So we are grateful for that kind of support. But I think here we saw the president recognizing that he had maybe gone just a little too far. I mean, it's a Trump way of doing things, right? Go too far, blow things up, but then back off very quickly. When you realize that you can, and no other president has done this recently, negotiate for favorable terms on access to minerals or access to shipping lanes. But he backed off pretty quickly, and that was something we're not quite used to with this president.
Right. So in the 14th edition of your classic civics book, is there going to be a chapter 23, Trump and Taco? Is that what we have to look forward to here, Wendy?
I'm literally negotiating how many changes I can make to the existing chapter on the presidency as we go forward with our next edition. So I will tell you that in a couple of months.
Okay, Wendy Schiller, thank you. At Bill Rhodes, Brown University today. Really appreciate it. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Surveillance coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Jane Foley with us now with Rabobank. They have a very interesting relationship, folks. They do all sorts of commercial activities. So Jane has really got the pulse of trade and commerce within what she's doing with foreign exchange strategy. Jane, right now I'm looking at the cross rates. You look at the majors, dollar, yen, euro, yen, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, fine. But I look at the nuances and I'm unsure what they're signaling. Like I see euro, yen finally signaling euro strength versus yen. How does Japan get to their Monday morning, our Sunday afternoon in New York?
Well, we know that the market's very skeptical of the yen and has been for months now. We still have, I think, a lot of the speculative community really still seeing the yen as the basis or the funding currency of a carry trade. And I think the onus has got to be on the Bank of Japan as well as maybe the Ministry of Finance to really shake and rattle that view. So we do have a Bank of Japan policy meeting tomorrow. And I think we need a significantly more hawkish Ueda, that's the governor, to really change that view. Now, he was pretty hawkish at the start of the year, but, most people were still on holiday right then. And of course, we have had these reassurances from the Ministry of Finance on the fiscal position too. But again, the market's just not convinced. So the yen really still very much on the back foot.
Jane, as we look at the dollar trading against major currencies around the world, we had a big sell-off in the U.S. dollar in the first half of 2025. Then it's kind of stabilized around these levels. How do you think about it in 2026 here? Is this kind of the new normal level for the dollar versus some of these major currencies?
Yeah, that's certainly what we think. I mean, the market consensus is that the dollar will continue to weaken. But if you look at the performance of the greenback through the second half of last year, well, in the second half, it's ended, that period, something like the second or maybe the third best performing G10 currency. So, it's still the worst performing currency last year, but that's because of its falls at the start of the year. And that, of course, has spooked an awful lot of people because, in recent months, I've had conversations at numerous times about, de-dollarization, about even debasement, those sorts of things. But I do think the one phrase that most people would agree upon is diversification. And I think relative to, say, the Buy America trade, which really sort of dominated from, say, the global financial crisis into the end of 2024, there is more appetite to diversify now. And that, I think, is probably going to keep the dollar not necessarily on a weak footing, because I think the US still offers great investment opportunities, for a lot of investors. I think we're going to be more choppy. And I think choppy ranges is how we see the dollar, against some of the majors going into 2026.
And I think, Jane, along those lines, I think what we've heard so far from Davos is business folks bullish on the U.S. Jonathan Ferro from Bloomberg Television is citing a study by PwC saying, you go poll a lot of these corporate CEOs around the world, they're still investing heavily in the U.S. market. That bodes well for the dollar.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And if you look at the surveys, say, from equity houses, they're relatively bullish in terms of the potential performance of the US equity market in 2026. And that's not what you see in the foreign exchange surveys, with economists thinking, the dollar's going to carry on falling. So that's why we're not really, that's one of the reasons we're not as bearish as the market consensus on the view for the dollar. I mean, if you look, at the US stock market, well, the US houses almost all of the top 10 tech companies in the world, a large part of the top 100. If you're going to get companies gaining from productivity gains because of AI, well, the US is really well positioned. On top of that, of course, the dollar now is cheap, or making those companies look even cheaper than they were. So from that point of view, we don't really see the dollar as really on this downturn. What we sort of see last year was a big position adjustment, and choppy range traded is what we expect.
Jane, one final question, not to turn into history or Patrick O'Brien from the 18th century, but let's go there. Rabobank owns the Netherlands and up north to the Baltic Sea. From where you sit, Jane, with all of your years of experience, how coordinated, attached, are the Scandinavian states. From Denmark into St. Petersburg, is everybody on the same page? Sweden, Norway, the Baltic states, is everybody on the same page?
Well, it is notable that you had Sweden and Finland moving into NATO really very recently, and I think that really gives us a pretty strong message as to who's aligned with whom. Denmark is outside of the Eurozone, but it is very much part of Europe, and I think we've seen that in some of the reactions from the European politicians this week. So Europe is very much different, from a federal position. The nationalism within the different countries is very strong, and that can add to significant barriers in getting things done. But, we've seen this week, Europe was still able, to come together and pull together with a single message.
Jane, thank you so much. Jane Foley of Rabobank. Just can't say enough about the continental perspective she brings. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Surveillance coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Let's get to Alexis is going, why am I doing this? Let's do the newspapers. Alexis Christoforous.
Hey, good morning, guys. So I saw this one in the Wall Street Journal. I immediately thought of Mr. Paul Sweeney. Because it's Duke, right? Just had their first outright ACC championship, more than half a century, thanks in large part to who?
Their quarterback.
Of course, Darian Mensah. Well, guess what? He was bolting for the exit. He wanted a bigger payday, so he went into the portal, tried to change schools, thanks to, I'm talking NIL, right? Name, image, likeness. So Duke filed a lawsuit against Mensah.
Okay, here's the deal. They have a 2-year contract with him, and he completed his first year, and he was going to bolt before his second year. So that's an issue. The second issue is he told the school and the world in December, I'm coming back for my second year. And so, therefore, Duke did not pursue a quarterback in the portal. Now they're left high and dry because he went into the portal literally an hour before it closed.
Right.
And Duke's a little miffed. So they got a temporary restraining order on the guy, so he can't enroll in Miami.
Can you warn me next time when you're doing this? I'll just go get a Tang and Tito's and Tang.
I'll make a ham sandwich. I got this.
Are you okay? Do you need a Tito's and Tang?
Well, what I would have said to the young man, I'm sure you've got very good lawyers.
Oh, he's all worked
Duke
up.
has more lawyers, so just be careful there, buddy.
Little breach of contract.
Should we have David Rubenstein in the comment?
No, we'll leave him out of it. We'll leave him out of it.
Okay. Thank you, Alexis. Do you have a second newspaper
I do have
morning?
a second one. Unfortunately, not a Duke one, but this comes from the New York Times. So federal regulators now looking at late night TV, right? So the FCC wants to enforce these they're largely unenforced media rules. Remember public interest standards when you had to give a politician the same amount of time if they were vying for a position? It kind of has gone by the wayside. So under the new guidance, the FCC wants these talk shows that are carried on local TV stations to offer candidates vying for the same office equal airtime. So who is this going to affect? Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, Stephen Colbert, CBS, who we already know is going away in June, right? Seth Meyers on NBC. Also, daytime talk shows like The View, which we know President Trump is not a fan of. So, conservatives have complained for years that these late night shows tilt far to the left. They have more Democrats on than Republicans. So we'll see if this public interest standard it becomes a thing again.
It's a real thing. It's been out there since 1934.
But you do feel like you see less and less of it. There's not a lot of the balanced approach.
Can I comment that I think, unlike our youth, lots of people aren't staying up to watch this stuff anymore?
Right.
Yeah. Because you can watch it the next day on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, the whole 11:30 midnight thing, I think it's sort of drifted away.
Yeah. Even SNL, I don't watch it. I rarely watch it in real time. Well, with these hours, we're rarely watching anything in real time late at night. All right. Last one for you.
One. This story I like.
Yeah. Did you guys have Lincoln Logs growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Gotta love it, right?
It was our Legos.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're both sitting down because the factory that makes Lincoln Logs, it's in Maine, it's shutting down.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a national crisis.
This is.
President Trump should address this.
He should. I mean,
From
this
Davos,
is big.
yes.
So now they're trying to scramble and find some place in China or somewhere else that can make these things.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so here's, I guess the good news is Lincoln Logs isn't going away. It's just the factory that made them. So the Pride Manufacturing is now scrambling, or Basic Fun is scrambling. That's the name of the company. Basic Fun scrambling to find a new factory to manufacture these. They're a century old.
You can't make Lincoln Logs in Vietnam.
I think, and then they're going to be
American.
tariff. So the guys are saying, hey, we're going to have to make them outside the U.S. With the tariff, they're going to be more expensive. We're going to have to
Remember
raise
when
their
the
prices.
dog chewed the green roof with peace?
Exactly.
Your father goes, they're going to die from the
Or
coloring.
you stepped on a Lincoln log in the middle of the night.
I may have to go buy some Lincoln Logs this week.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.